Okay. Welcome back to My Hero Academia Anime Review, episode 95. Another spoiler review for this one. Yep, because I'm reviewing the third film released for My Hero Academia World Heroes Mission, which I went to a movie theater not in my hometown, my town I live in. Nope, I had to go to Lakeland, and they gave me this as a free thing for it. Now, yes, they do wear these outfits in the movie. Okay, there are two lies about this movie that the movie does lie about in the marketing. Number one, did they wear this outfit the entire time in the movie? The answer is no, they don't. Let me put that right away. Like, after the opening scene, they stop wearing these outfits and they go straight back to regular attire. The other thing they lie about is, like, it was heavily promoted that now Deku was be wanted for something. It was because his quirk was on control. That was the premise. The quirks are on control. That's partially true here. Okay, but the thing is, he is framed for not for his quirk on control. Oh no, he is framed for mass murder. I'm like, really? And by the way, Endeavor does question the commissioner about this. You can Ed back up, and he's like, "I'm not telling you." Because it was so obvious the way he was acting. He was obviously in the back pocket of the villain in this film. Which, by the way, he made his debut in the actual TV show prior to this. Let's see, because I have the character designs here. Let's see the characters. He is... Surprisingly, he's not on the poster. Nope. Now, of course, the main character, the 3 stars of this movie, which are Deku, Bakuto, and Shudo. Which I'm like, that's interesting. I did not suspect that. The fact those 3 would be technically the stars. Now, despite the fact, yes, a lot of the other characters don't do a lot of anything like Pinky, Ingenium. These 2, who actually had a small role in the last movie, this movie, those 2 reduced to being spectators. Now, this book does have some, the new characters pop up in the movie. We have, Rudy. Yes. Whose quirk is his bird. I'm like, interesting. Pino. Yeah, Pino is his quirk, where apparently it reveals his true emotion. And these are his 2 siblings, Roro and Lala. Yes, seriously. That is the name of these 2 little kids. And I'm thinking, okay, so the creators of this movie couldn't think of a better name for a little girl. I mean, my niece's name is Penelope, and they call this little girl Lala. At least in the case of the older brother, at least I like his name. Oh yeah, his name is basically Roddy. That's fine. I have no problem with his name. But Roro? Seriously, it's like the scriptwriters. I'm not blaming Funimation for this. I watched things dubbed. That apparently the scriptwriters couldn't think of a better name than Roro and Lala. I mean, their role in the movie is to be the kind of like spectators in a way. They're the little siblings that Roddy has to worry about, which that's perfectly fine. He's being a reasonable older brother in the absence of their father who went missing. Of course, they have a cover story basically explaining why he did, because he joined this group known as Homunculus, I think it is. Yes. This guy here, this guy here, yeah, believe it or not, he's actually a canon character, despite the fact this movie is actually his first appearance. We also have the debut of Clairvoyance. Yes, seriously. A woman named Clairvoyance. As in... Yes, so on the nose what this woman's name is. And her sidekick is... doesn't have a name. Just that she's a flying squirrel. Now, Burnin, yeah, love this character. Don't like the fact that... I mean, her role is so tiny in the movie. She shows up for a few cameos. Doesn't even barely... I think she gets like one line in the whole movie. We also have the character Majestic, who is a canon character, despite the fact he doesn't really do anything at all. Okay, we have Flicked Turd. I love this guy's look. Not really a big fan of the name. I mean, Flicked Turn. That's your villain. And yes, he made his debut in the anime original episode for season 5, which I believe was the second one. Yeah, it was the second one they had, was the beach episode. Yeah, that was his anime debut. And performance-wise, great. I think that the voice actor they chose for him did an absolute fantastic job. But here's the thing. The guy is an over-the-top villain. It is so obvious this guy was the villain. He's basically the leader of a freaking cult who thinks that, get this, quarks are a disease. I am not kidding about that. If you love the last two movies, it's up to you if you're going to like this one. Okay, so that's your villain from the movie. And that's the first thing you see is him. He's basically monologuing to his henchmen. A lot of you are men and women who... Now, they do bring up a common thing brought up in every episode of the anime. That 80% of the world is born quarks. 20% are born quarkless. And it's mentioned by him that most of his group is made people who don't have quarks. Despite the fact he does have a woman who shoots arrows, they don't give her... Let's see. This is character... Now you're probably thinking, does this character book give her a name? Well... They have a lion guy who's basically was like red dot. Yes, let's see if I can find him here. For character profiles, let's see. Yeah, here's one for you. Gal villain and who's a spinny guy and bomb villain. Yes, more generic names. You have Setero, who's the guy in the mask. Oh, her name is Barros. Okay. Don't have a problem with the name. Love the look, despite the fact that appearance-wise, she looks like a ripoff of Kate Bishop Hawkeye. No, seriously. Does she remind you of Kate Bishop Hawkeye? I mean, the appearance is very similar, except for the mask. Now, nothing is explained about this character. Like, barely thing is explained about her, aside from the fact, apparently she is a... woman who born with a quark who thinks the quark is a disease, despite the fact it really isn't. She works for Falk Turn, and her job is to simply eliminate Deku. Now, why the heck is Falk Turn turn the whole world against frickin' Deku? Because he has a quark. That is seriously his reason. Oh, by the way, he does not reveal his motivation for creating his group until, like, the last, 10 minutes. Like, what is behind everything? Why? Oh, yeah, by the way, Falk Turn has a quark called Reflect. Which, okay, that's an interesting quark. And apparently, he didn't want the quark. Also, he's got blue skin. I'm thinking, since when does having a quark try to give your skin blue? And where apparently, everybody rejects him just because his quark. Couldn't you, I don't know, think of the fact that maybe he wouldn't like your quark? So he started this group purely because he hates quark. He hates the fact he's got a quark. And he thinks that he managed to be purified with him on top. And his plan is, get this, massacre all the heroes with this trigger bomb. Which, let me point something out about the trigger thing. That is an actual thing that was actually from the show and the manga. It was a drug that apparently first showed up years prior to the series. This was actually first mentioned by Fat Gum when he was younger, that he actually took down a drug ring that created Trigger. The thing is, they did shut down a facility that created Trigger in the actual anime, well, mainly in the Overhaul arc, and that happened in manga too. And by the way, the Trigger bombs are basically like giant boxes. They are the size of a frickin' house. And these things are planted in various countries. By the way, there is a U.S. in here, plus a fictionalized country named Onheim, which I'm like, okay. Which seems like it's basically a fictionalized version of California, given the fact that we see the Golden Gate Bridge in the actual movie. Yeah, the Golden Gate Bridge is here. Now, I listed some negatives, but the generic villain names. The villain's motivation is very stupid, in my opinion. I think, his motivation is complete utter nonsense. Because people rejected him because of his quirk. Like, couldn't you think? I don't know, people thought your quirk was creepy. That's probably the reason why. Now, the animation is really good. Almost the entire movie. There's a couple spots I didn't like. The fact that it seems as though the animation wasn't entirely finished in some parts of the movie. Mostly in a couple fight scenes. I'd say that some parts of the movie, the version I saw anyways, seemed that though a couple fight scenes weren't finished. I mean, yeah, they have the colors there, which look really good. And yes, it's the same studio who makes the show, makes the movie, which that does happen a lot of the time. Of course, this is made by, you might think, is Toei made this movie? No, it's Bones. They're the ones who make this movie. They made the previous two movies, which those look really good. And fellas, so they used to have plenty of time dedicated to them to make these movies look so good. This one, I would say, not as much time is given to this film as the previous two films were. So the film starts out with basically Falk's turn, giving a speech about the whole thing. Now I should point out also his base is gorgeous. I love the design of this place. It looks really good. I at least got a hand to this. When the movie starts, it starts out with some gorgeous animation. Like, wow. Like the opening scene, like they really did their homework. So you think of the trailer where you have the characters in these attires on these planes. They go out, and of course they don't really wear these outfits for this movie. Yeah, there's no real explanation of why they decided to switch from these outfits. Now, they do explain what WHM stands for, World Heroes Mission. That's an agency that was established. It's a movie original agency that's basically their apparently their only function is to take out the trigger bombs. Which this just seems like a substitute for the Hero Safety Commission, which we'll see in the actual show itself. It seems like it's a stand-in for that, but more of expanded scale. Now, they do have the various characters from these various countries to find these bombs. Because we started off basically with a bomb going off, and I believe it was Tokyo of all places. Yes, I think it was Tokyo. Not sure. So, they have it go off, and they go to this various bases to find out where the heck this bomb is. And they couldn't find it. They searched all over the city, and they just couldn't find the trigger bombs. And they took on the bases, and apparently people there had no idea there even was these trigger bombs. I'm like, okay, so you have this big terrorist organization, and not everybody knows what the heck is going on. That's some poor planning on your part. So apparently it was an internal thing. Yeah, it's kind of confusing when it comes to writing in this movie when it comes to the terrorist organization. So we then have Deku, Bakudo, and Shudo. We see them out of these costumes right after the opening scene, which by the way was really good, by the way, taking out a bunch of these terrorists, which that's interesting. So they go back to the regular uniforms they wear in the show, which I'm thinking, why would you switch off these stealth? I get now, story-wise, it kind of makes sense. I mean, well, a lot of people think it's weird for superheroes to wear combat, basically stealth tactic attire while these characters are going out grocery shopping. Yeah, they're going out grocery shopping. So, and then all of a sudden we have the bomb villain and the wave villain just stealing jewels. And, of course, these three do their jobs. They go out and catch the villains. Which, good job on their part. They capture two, no problem. The third one happened to be Roddy, who basically has not very good clothing because he's living in a very poor area of the city. So basically he's told to deliver a package. Go to the China cheese restaurant, deliver a package. Like, okay. So, and then he's given a apparently looks like a suitcase full of jewels. And then we also see this other guy who turns out this guy with the iPad just happens to be his father. They don't really explain this at all. It's like, oh, he's on the run organization. He gets taken out by Barros, who I love her motorcycle that she has. Her quirk is simply that her hand transforms into a bow with a string, and she pulls it back like an actual bow. Sometimes she can shoot like 3 arrows at once, which, okay. I like her quirk. I think it's really good. It's better than, let's say, spin around like a freaking whirlwind from Marvel Comics. But her, That's unique for an archer. First time I could think of had an archer quirk in this series. Because they never had this in the anime. No. So the guy gets taken out, and he's in the hospital. He's in a coma. By the way, by the time I finished watching the movie, the guy does not get the coma. Not that I saw, no, because basically after the credits, there's like no post-credits scene, and you're thinking, really? There's no post-credits scene for this movie? Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. Like, you have this movie, really good movie. And you don't have a follow-up to this, like, oh, the guy's in a coma, so don't use him anymore in the movie. He just dropped the movie for like no explanation. So Deku goes after Rhodey. By the way, they don't introduce each other at all. They basically just, hey, you. They don't say anything to each other. And basically, there was the car basically hit the side of this bridge, where the suitcase, the briefcase that was kept in the car, fell on the ground. It was wrapped in this like cloth. Roddy picks it up, think it's the suitcase because the thing basically kind of causes confusion, and he runs away. And of course, Deku chases after him, and then we see Barros get the air suitcase, and it turns out it's actually the jewels. So just leaves on the ground and goes after him. Now, why the heck get the suitcase? One side of it, just some passports. It's not revealed until toward the end of the movie of the reason for the suitcase, which I'll get to that. So after Deku, like some confusion, of course, he tries to hand it to the police, and then the police starts opening fire on them. And you're thinking, why the heck would he open fire on them? Why use lethal force on Deku? Like, what the heck did he do? And all the news that he apparently is wanted for be a mass murderer, and all the superheroes, well, I point out, though, that's bullcrap. There is no evidence to support this. Heck, even Endeavor questions this, too. And the commissioner's like, go away. I'm going to do what the heck I want. Yes, this commissioner, oh boy, it was so obvious from the first moment you hear him speak that he was basically on the villain's payroll. It was so obvious. So he mobilizes his entire police force to capture one superhero who, by the way, has done nothing wrong. He does his job. Of course, Bakugo and Shudo do get chastised by Endeavor later. We'll go out to petty criminals. And the thing is, that kind of was also partially their job, basically to stop criminals. That's basically why they became superheroes. Stop crimes, help people. And if they hadn't, people got hurt. They technically did their jobs. Why isn't ever chastised them over this for? This makes no freaking sense. Yeah, it's almost like people who wrote the dub apparently like do work on the show itself, but who wrote the dub script for this movie. Well, in the case of Stoltz basically did an okay job, basically, for Endeavor. Yeah, his performance is okay. I appreciate, though, he's given a little more screen time in this movie than he was in the last movie. Yeah, by the way, in the last movie, he gets maybe like 2 or 3 minutes of screen time. Here, he's here for a good chunk of the movie, which, good job part of the movie for doing that. Maybe because the movie takes place during the Endeavor agency arc. So, Deku and Roddy are on the run. And then, of course, over that suitcase, they look around the suitcase like, couldn't find anything at all. And then, like, we're determined with the bad guys. So they basically go into hiding. Of course, Deku does kind of explain what the heck is going on. And there's part of the news about the whole stupid story. Now, I don't know if this is a play on, like, news that basically is not proven. Or liberal news. I have no idea if it's a play on that because the logo on this news screen looks very similar to Fox News. Yeah, it's the same exact logo, just change what letters you put on it. It's practically the Fox logo. The Fox News logo. Like, why the heck would they use this logo for? I have no idea. I'm not blaming Funimation for that. I blame Bones for that. So they basically spread this false narrative that, oh, Deku killed 12 people, even though it's not true at all. Yeah, so they end up stealing some clothes, and they end up staying in a barn for the night. And of course, Deku and of course Shudo does figure out, well, Deku's code after he tells him to take out the GPS because they can track him. Because, yeah, that actually is a pretty good idea. Take the battery out. Only call it necessary. You don't call him like contact him once. So Shudo and Bakudo basically after him. Not a bad idea to do, given the fact they know him and the fact it's just Deku. I mean, it's not like they're there to simply arrest him. You don't need an endeavor to go after Deku. That'd be a bad idea. Like, sending Shudo and Bakudo is much more better idea because you have a direct focus on finding the trigger bombs, which that actually is really good writing on the part of that. So, they go and they eventually find Deku. Like, it takes them a while. So, of course, they have Lair of Deku and Roddy steals a truck, which by the way, they have an IOU sent to the World Heroes mission, which is actually quite hilarious. So you drive the truck, and do this montage of them going across the country, trying to get across the border. They eventually do get across the border. Well, they do get to the border, but the train is actually being checked by the police. So, and then all of a sudden we have Barrows pop up again, along with this round bot guy. Barrows, I kind of figured that they should have her turn good because I like her character design. Her motivation is kind of questionable, at least. But the weird thing is, like, Deku briefly fights her along with Bakudo, but there's no conversation between any of the characters aside from her and her boss. I'm like, you have this character who hunts in the whole movie, and yet Deku has no words exchanged with her. Bakudo, I think, exchanged a couple words with her, but that's simply it. So they show up and they take on her helicopter, and then instead of, like, being taken captive by these heroes, she decides to commit suicide by jumping out of the helicopter and doing, oh yeah, let's do this, and fall splat on the freaking ground. Even though they don't confirm the fact she's dead. Nope, they don't. The round villain, that he's definitely dead because Barrows killed him because he was turned a traitor. Though it was quite obvious. And then, of course, they find out what's inside the suitcase. Apparently, one of the bottom portions of the suitcase had this little rod in it. So this rod had this little puzzle, which they have in the flashback of the father, where he gave this puzzle to Roddy was a kid. He gave him a little hint how to solve it, and he solved it. So Roddy solved the puzzle, and what was inside the thing? Get this, a chip, and this big one, a small chip, big one. And the small one had detailed files on pretty much probably the whole entire organization, along with a message from his father where apparently it was revealed that he was actually kidnapped. He didn't join the organization. He was forced to because they would basically hurt his family if he didn't. So he also gives the fact this is actually the key to turn off the trigger bombs. So the four go to the organization, to go to the location, which just turns out to be the main villain's base. Yep. They happen to be, they mentioned 400 kilometers away, which is probably about a couple of miles. I'm like, wow, was that close by? Wow. Just by sheer coincidence. So they go out and they attack the base. Of course, they actually fly out there because apparently he wants to become a pilot. So they fly out there, and of course then we have Roddy stay behind. And of course the three heroes go out and they break into the base. You have all three basically take out terrorists. Well, Baka takes down two guys who are twins. Let's see if I can find them here. They didn't really list off exactly like who actually voices them. I don't really know. So they go out, they break to the base, and meanwhile while this is going on, all the heroes are frantically searching. They go on the field again because the trigger bomb's about to go off now because the villain's made his big speech. By the way, he doesn't show his face, surprisingly. I would have thought, though, he would because he's a grand villain. He would show his face like, ha ha, I'm the villain. Like, he could have done that. Nope, just has the symbol of his organization, just does audio only, which I'm like, that's kind of odd. Like, why would a villain do that for? Maybe they want to fall on that classic trope of basically villain basically talking to the world. So, of course, they find out that the plan was simply use trigger bombs to kill the superheroes, and Shudo wanted to form them, But actually, that'd be a bad idea because if they are informed, they would basically not do their jobs as heroes. Which, okay, fine. Of course, they break into, they have everybody do all their work on all the states they go to. Like they have, I think it's like Froppy, like basically you have the Dragons team, which is simply put like Froppy, Ochaku, and a few other heroes they go to France, America. Surprisingly, not the UK. They go like all over the place. So, and then of course Deku takes the main villain, which I believe this is actually the second movie in a row he takes the villain by. This is probably the first movie where he takes the main villain by himself. Well, mostly anyways. He did it also in the first movie as well, but he did have help of All Might. In the second movie, he had to fight help from Bakuto to fight the main villain. This time, surprisingly, he did not. He did get some help, some minor help, but he mostly defeated the villain by himself, which, wow. And they show off his powers, and it's seriously hurting Deku. And of course, he had Roddy. He's worried about his family because he finds out that apparently one of the places they put the bombs is actually near, like, the locations happen to be near where his house is. Wow, that's something. Just by pure coincidence. So, he gets shot with a laser. Yes, a laser. Of course, Deku fights him for a long period of time. This fight goes on for a good, like, 20 minutes. Which, that's quite lengthy. Bakuto's fight with the two twins, like, this goes on for almost that long. Gets to a point where basically Bakuto loses his shirt, his gauntlets, and he's bleeding like freaking crazy. Shudo decides to fight a villain who looks like muscular. It does look like a combination of muscular and one of the Nemus from the series. Where the heck this creature came from? Don't know. He just randomly shows up. Shudo fights him for quite a while. Of course, this creature nearly kills Shudo while he's at it. And in the case of Deku, he fights the villain for quite some time. And eventually he does finally beat it. And apparently, after he's beaten, his skin turns normal. I'm like, that's weird. His skin was blue the whole movie, yet here's like, oh, it's normal. And then, of course, Roddy takes the chip to disengage the bomb. And they're all turned off. And then, of course, the organization is arrested. The commissioner is arrested. Of course, obviously, he was going to get arrested because he was basically on their take. And, of course, everyone's coming to the hospital. And here's something, though. Like, okay, then they all go home. And, of course, they're all reunited. Everybody's, like, so happy to see each other again. Like, I would have thought, though. Now, of course, they had this post-credits scene, the mid-credits, where Roddy gets an actual job working at the bar where he's frequented. The bar is usually empty, so he gets a regular job there. And goes back to school. Everything hunky-dory. Like, you finish watching the movie, like, man, we're missing some stuff here. Like, the father. Roddy is there for him. His father is perfectly fine, but in the hospital. There's barely interaction with the characters once they reunite. There's no scene of that at all. I assume they did, but I would have loved to see even a montage. Nope. Had all the teams who were all over the world come home, reunite with the kids over there. And they're like so happy. Of course, I love the fact that Chaku is near Deku, where she's like almost hugging him from the back, which that was quite nice. But yeah, this is a pretty good movie. Is it good to last two? No. I would say so far, this is more of the weakest film of the whole entire trilogy. Yes, this movie has grossed a lot more money than the last two films. Oh, yes, definitely. Yep. Like, currently, box office-wise, this movie has earned, like, about $40 million. It's not bad. The movie came out, like, in Japan, like, 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. It was released here just, like, 2 days ago. Yes. Now, I don't think anybody knew this one was coming until we saw the images. Like, oh, we have this thing where we have this third movie coming out. There was only one reason why this movie was made. Because the last movie made a boatload of money. So Bones is like, this like saying this is going to be the last movie. No, we're going to make another movie anyways. Yeah. So, I would say of the main characters who actually tend to do something, I like the fact, even though, yes, that Deku, Bakudo, and Shudo. I'm glad the fact these three get a lot of focus. I like the fact Shudo gets a focus, which that's interesting. Like, he got some focus in the previous movies. This one got a lot of focus for him. And I do appreciate, though, that Froppy gets a chance to do something in the movie instead of just being a spectator like she was in the first movie. Yeah, I like that. I didn't like it that Ingenium and Pinky didn't do anything at all. They were reduced to being frickin' spectators, even though last movie they actually had a frickin' role. I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, last movie, like, all the characters, all the Class 1A had a role to play in the last movie. This one, it's most of them, but not all of them. And unlike the last movie, I do appreciate this movie doing this. All Might has got more screen time. I'm like, him being at the base makes total sense. And, like, the fact that, well, Deku brings up All Might to Roddy is like, oh yeah, he was Japan's number one superhero. That's indeed true. And I love the fact that he gets a chance to get a lot more screen time. I mean, yeah, I at least got appreciative of that the adult superheroes got a lot more screen time than they got in the last movie. Which, that's actually a pretty positive on my part, I think, anyways. I would say probably the only adult hero who didn't do anything in this whole movie is probably Eraserhead. You saw a brief cameo at the end, which, that's kind of weird. Yeah, I know Eraserhead, surprisingly. But given the fact this is away from the school, which, fine. Unlike in the case the last movie took place after Endeavor Agency, but before the current arc that the upcoming season is going to be doing, this movie takes place during the Endeavor arc. I mean, this movie is a movie takes place between the two movies. Kind of, anyway. You could say the chronologically this movie takes place before the last movie. But the last movie came out last year here. Yep. It was surprising the movie came out later than last year. Oh, yes. Yep. It is much later. Sweet. Yeah. Came out much later because I remember this movie was released here last year in February. Yeah, it was February of last year. And the last movie, believe it or not, before everything was shut down last year, that was the last movie I saw in theaters, was the last movie for this very series. Though I've seen a few movies since then. And I'm very appreciative, though, the fact that I've seen all three of these movies in theaters. And aside from these three, what are anime movies I've seen in theaters? I've also seen Broly and One Piece Stampede. I officially have now seen 5 anime movies in theaters. Actually 6, because I've also seen Demon Slayer movie as well. 6 of them. Which is actually pretty good. Now have I seen movies like, I don't know, Spirited Away in theaters? No, never did. Actually, scratch, I have seen one movie in theaters. This actually is 7. I kind of forgot I saw this one. Pokemon the movie. Yes, I saw that in theaters. That movie came out like 21 years ago, but yes, I have seen it in theaters. Yep. It's from like 22 years ago. Okay, so that's it for Sick of You. Next review is going to be Shaman King. Okay? Yeah. And Carrie's still like, yes, I know there's a new chapter for the manga released today. I'll read it a little bit later, okay? And might not get to all the anime I want to get today, but today I will get the Shaman King. Okay? Next video. Bye.